Hello, everybody. I do hope this finds you well. I hope you're doing well in your life, both professionally and personally. And maybe these next few minutes about talking about gratitude will help you see something or someone a bit differently. Gratitude is a feeling, it's a peace of mind. It's not only the way you act, but also the way you believe. It's being grateful for all the good fortune that you have in your life. All of us have something to be proud of. All of us have something to be grateful for, if only we so choose to look for it. Hopefully after this presentation, you look for more that's good in your life as opposed to things that are bad or could be better. I've long believed that no one's given something more, only something different. If you look at just about any famous person that has walked this earth, they've been given much, but they always wish they had something more, something different. There isn't a superstar athlete who wins the Super Bowl that at some point doesn't have something in their life they wish they didn't have. A divorce, losing money, maybe not being able to pursue their careers they once did. Look at many former athletes who were formerly great and now see themselves as not great anymore. Not much has changed other than they have a different profession. But yet look at how their attitude and perceptions have changed simply because their time is spent off the field instead of on the field. There's many people who've been famous, superstars in television and movies, maybe not so much anymore, and they look back with somewhat faded glory. You may even hear the words they used to be, or I used to be somebody good. They still are, they're just good in different ways. That's what that saying says. We all have something that somebody else doesn't have. Our job, our role, our goal in life is to do something with what we have. Everybody has something, and that something can make you a somebody if only you so choose to pursue it. It reminds me of Andrew Carnegie. He was one of the seminal soaring figures in American history. At the time, he was the wealthiest of Americans. But he wrote a book called The Gospel of Wealth. It's still a book that's read today. One of his famous sayings was, "The man who dies thus rich dies disgraced." He believed that people should use their wealth to help people in their current lives. No, he didn't believe that when he died he should give all his money away. He believed that when he was living he should do so. He gave away most of his fortune. He founded Carnegie Mellon, one of the great universities in the land. He built over 2,500 libraries. Fun fact, when I was working for a city some years ago, we had a Carnegie Mellon, or a Carnegie library. Another fun fact, I was a library director of that same Carnegie library. Of course, we built another one over the years, but that Carnegie library that he built that actually provided books and education and knowledge for our community is still there. And who would have ever thought many years later I actually would have been a library director of a library built by Andrew Carnegie. He also donated thousands of organs to help people learn about music. Founded Carnegie Hall, which still thousands of people trek to every week to listen to concerts and other types of adventures. His bequests show his gratitude for what he's been given. He had an opportunity to do something of consequence in his time, and he wanted to afford others that exact same opportunity. He once said, "The older I get, the less I listen to what people say, and the more I look at what they do." It wasn't good enough to say that you should do something. He wanted you to do something with what you say. Hopefully, that's what I do in the books that I write and the presentations that I give. How do you have gratitude? How does a person change their attitude to be more grateful for what they have rather than ungrateful for what they don't have? I think there's three things that you should do. You should have forgiveness, you should have compassion, and you should have an understanding and an appreciation of the good fortune you have. Talk about more in greater detail, but forgiving is forgiveness to those who capriciously, maliciously, willfully, continually, and negatively infected, and affected, and injured our lives. Compassion is towards those that are less fortunate, to those who have neither the mental or physical ability or the circumstances or even luck to be or become what they dream they could be. Good fortune is whether you make it on your own or with the help of others. Few make it throughout life without at least some luck and some good fortune. So no matter what your athletic abilities or intellectual capabilities are, we should recognize that we have been given some good fortune. Everybody has some fortune in some area of their lives. The trick is, as we mentioned earlier, to use it for good. Forgiveness. We really should never forget that forgiveness in and of itself is a lost art. To some, we do live in offensive and aggrieved times. We tend to see more people against something than for something. We hear that saying is they know what to say but not what to do. Happens to be about forgiveness as well. Some are more offended by what happened yesterday than what could happen tomorrow, are fighting battles of the past rather than constructing accords for the future. Without exception, we have seen terrible and unspeakable atrocities at the hands and the minds of some towards many. Though many have happened too late to overcome, there has been enlightened people who showed something different. Alice Milliot was one of those people. She changed the scope of sports. She felt that it was incomprehensible that women were excluded from Olympic Games. So in 1919, what did she do? She just didn't think. She did. She thought that women should be allowed to participate in the Olympics. They said no. So she created her own federation, the International Sports Federation, she called it then. The Olympics, though, was not too pleased and forced her to change the name. She did, yet the organization she created still existed. It existed so well for so long that the Olympics capitulated. They allowed women to enter the Olympic sports. That's why, in 2021, the French Olympics Committee unveiled a statue in her honor at their headquarters in Paris. She believed, as we have no vote, we cannot make our needs publicly felt or bring pressure to bear in the right quarters. It was over 100 years ago. She's talking about the vote. If you have the vote, you have power. If you have power, you can change injustice into justice. And that's what Alice did. But she also forgave. We should not forget anything that's happened of consequence, but we have to forgive if we're to work together, live together, and yes, love together. Or even more simply, if we're to like each other again. This doesn't happen too much anymore. It's incredibly difficult to let go of the animosities and bitternesses and grudges and sadnesses and griefs and hatred that has impacted too many for too long. Physical pain may appear to be the most excruciating to overcome with its obvious physical effects, but the mental pain can paralyze both the person's mind and body. In fact, to forgive the seemingly unforgivable people who've caused so much pain and harm in our life, whether that be physical or mental, is a mark of a truly special human being. Pope John Paul II was one of those people. And I want to talk about him for less the religious aspect, but more of the moral aspect. He's one of, we hope, many people in our world who've made a difference about how we should act and live. He lost his mother at 8 and his father at 21. He was raised during the Nazi and communist regimes, but he wanted to become a priest because he wanted to encourage a spiritual and cultural resistance to the communist occupations in Poland. He became a cardinal, then, as we all know, a pope. Shortly after he became pope, a Bulgarian by the name of Mehmet Ogman shot him. 2 years after nearly being assassinated, the Pope asked to meet with the same person. And at that meeting, he forgave Mr. Aga for nearly killing him. There's an interesting postscript to that meeting, 30 years after they met in prison when the Pope forgave him. The Pope died, and Mehmet Aga visited the Vatican and laid 24 roses at the grave of the man he tried to kill. It wasn't just one forgiving the other. The other went for absolution some years later. Pope John Paul II once said, "We all need to be forgiven by others so that we must all be ready to forgive." It's a very important statement. We all need to be forgiven by others for what we've done, but we also have to forgive others for what we've done to them. That brings up the second aspect of gratitude, compassion and being compassionate. We do search far and wide to become part of a community comprised of what we hope are caring souls, a place where people display sympathy and empathy and humanity and sensitivity and compassion. Compassion, though, is more than what we know of sympathy or empathy. It's a genuine concern for those that we share this earth with and for those we may never meet. It's even more than compassion. It's even more than concern. It's actually taking action. So much of what we talk about is about taking action, doing something to intentionally address and consciously alleviate the troubles of others. Just as importantly, it's an acknowledgement that everyone begins their journey on not necessarily third base or second base or first base. They often rarely make it out of home plate, and they need some help to round the bases. It brings up Barry Switzer. Some people may not remember Barry Switzer, but his accomplishments stand the test of time. First, a bit of his background. He was a bootlegger, or his father was a bootlegger, who was jailed. His mother shot herself because she suffered from depression. She actually died in Barry's arms. His father was later murdered in that exact same home. Barry, though, with every reason not to be a success in life, picked himself up and became a coach of the University of Oklahoma. He won a national championship. Later became a coach of Dallas Cowboys. Yes, he won a Super Bowl there. He's one of just a handful, I believe 3 or 4, who've won a national college championship and a professional or world championship in the NFL. But his longest job he ever had was working as a Special Olympics coach. His experiences in childhood were harrowing, but they were the exact ones that developed his sense of compassion that made him a good human being. Some good does come from the worst of times if you learn the lesson. He once said, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, some people are born on third base and go through life thinking they hit a triple. Barry Switzer wasn't born on third base, may not have been born on first base. But there's few people who rounded the bases more than Barry Switzer in their life. And that is what compassion is. The U.S. has long been a compassionate, yes, a charitable nation, but even less so today than just a few years ago. Between 2009 and 2018, the U.S. led the world in terms of giving. But by 2020, we were 19th, surpassed by countries like Thailand, Ghana, and Uganda. U.S. still helps those who have neither the mental or physical ability to provide for their own welfare. And it is through this charity that this sense of community is developed. Maybe less than before, but still enough. This country wants others to feel part of something and to contribute to something greater. It's a foundational element towards building a place where people want to go, one with hope and charity, giving and benevolence. Brings up Mother Teresa. She, like Barry Switzer, was born of humble beginnings, the daughter of a grocer. She started as a school teacher in a Catholic school, but then asked the Catholic Church to let her go. She wanted to found what's called the Missionaries of Charity, dedicated to the plight of the most destitute. At its height, she had 4,000 sisters working at her charity, 100,000 volunteers, and that charity operated in 123 countries. She obtained and received great rewards for her work, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President and Mrs. Reagan, the Nobel Prize, but she's also made a saint by the Catholic Church. But far and away, the greatest reward was the thanks and appreciation from those who mattered the least to those who had the most. By her example, maybe others will learn to care for the often forgotten as much as she did. She once said, "A life not lived for others is not a life." Compassion brings up the last, good fortune. Appreciating the good fortune that has come our way may be a challenge for some. Maybe because there seems to be more negativity than positivity, more unhappiness than happiness, and that consumes and too many. No one gets it all, but as we said, everyone gets something. The main point is that we must do something with what we have, work to improve something, to advance something. And that brings up Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis was a television and movie star of the golden age of Hollywood, one of the great comedians of his time. His work with Dean Lewis is an example of, or Dean Martin is an example of pristine comedic timing and acting brilliance surpassed by just a very few in his profession. But it is his work with muscular dystrophy that may be the most memorable. He wasn't afflicted by muscular dystrophy, unlike Michael J. Fox with Parkinson's or Christopher Reeve with debilitating spinal injuries. He really had no connection to muscular dystrophy, but he believed that kids deserved a chance. So he hosted a telethon for almost 60 years. And during that telethon, he raised over $2.5 billion to try to find a cure for muscular dystrophy. We still don't have that cure, but we're working on it. This is what Jerry said. I'm probably the most selfish man you've ever met in your life. No one gets more satisfaction or the joy that I get out of seeing kids realize that there is hope. Quite a human being. What did we learn? What did we learn about gratitude? No matter the place we live or the land we inhabit, there is good in this world if only we choose to look for it. We've learned that the best of communities and neighborhoods within them are comprised of individuals and families of many traits and characteristics, from contributing to the general welfare to a graceful disposition. We've also learned about this trait that's called gratitude, of knowing that we should forgive those who've maligned us, show compassion to those whose choices and circumstances have been unwise and unfortunate, and that there are people of ordinary means who leave an extraordinary legacy, that through their words, because of their actions, and by their deeds, these are the grateful. They're the men and women who stand for something good, pursue something great, all the while grateful for the roads they walk upon. Thanks, everybody. Hope you enjoy your day.